I was sitting at my desk when I got the call. Mom had left me everything, her stocks, her properties, even her secret savings. As I read through the will, tears streaming down my face, I felt a mix of grief and gratitude for her final gift. Then came the text that changed everything. My wife Amanda was filing for divorce, just 2 weeks after my mother's funeral. What she didn't know was that my mom had seen through her plan from the beginning. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you want to find out how my dying mother outsmarted the woman who was only after our family fortune. The day I met Amanda still feels like yesterday, even though it's been years. I was 32 working as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. My life was pretty stable back then. Good job, decent apartment, and a close relationship with my mom, who lived just outside the city. Dad had passed away when I was in college, so it had been just me and Mom for a long time. I guess you could say I was a bit of a mama's boy, but we had each other's backs. She was my rock, my confidant, and the smartest person I knew. I never considered myself naive, but looking back, I was definitely too trusting when it came to relationships. That's probably why I fell so hard and so fast for Amanda. We met at a company party. She worked in marketing and had just transferred from the New York office. The moment she walked in, I couldn't take my eyes off her, tall, confident with this smile that could light up a room. I remember watching her work the crowd, moving from group to group with such ease. When she finally made her way to me, I was already halfway in love. "You must be James Brown," she said. "I've heard good things about your work." We talked for hours that night, about our careers, our dreams, our families. In retrospect, I should have noticed how her eyes lit up when I mentioned my family owned some property, but I was blinded by attraction and the way she laughed at all my jokes. Looking back, there were signs from the beginning. The way she asked about my salary on our third date, how she seemed disappointed when I told her I lived in an apartment instead of a house. The comment she made about my watch not being a real brand. But when you're falling in love, you make excuses. You see what you want to see. 6 months after we met, I proposed. Some of my friends thought it was too soon, but when you know, you know. Right, Amanda said yes immediately, no hesitation. That should have been another clue. When I brought Amanda to meet my mom, things were polite but cool between them. Mom was always warm with everyone, but with Amanda, there was a reservation I hadn't seen before. She hugged. Amanda showed her around the house, but later, when we were alone, she asked me, "Are you sure about this? James' marriage is a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything," I told her. She nodded slowly. "Just remember what your father and I taught you about money and marriage. Keep some things separate. It's not about trust, it's about security." I brushed off her concern. "Amanda isn't like that, Mom. She loves me for me." Mom just gave me that look, the one that said she knew more than she was telling. Our wedding was smaller than Amanda wanted. She had dreams of a 200-person affair at some fancy vineyard, but I preferred something intimate. We compromised on 75 guests at a nice hotel. I noticed how she kept pointing out to her friends that the modest size was my choice, not hers, as if she needed them to know she had bigger aspirations. After the honeymoon, we bought a house together. Nothing extravagant, a nice 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood. Amanda seemed disappointed again. "I thought we could afford something in Bellevue," she said, referring to the much more expensive area across the lake. "Maybe once we both get promotions," I told her. That became a pattern. Amanda always wanting more, bigger, better. Her spending habits started becoming concerning. New clothes every week. Expensive dinners, a car lease that was way above our budget. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd get defensive. "You're so cheap, James. We make good money. We should enjoy it." One Sunday afternoon, visiting Mom for dinner, I confided in her about our financial disagreements. Has Amanda asked about my money? Yet Mom asked directly. I was taken aback. "What do you mean? Has she asked if you're in my will? If the house is coming to you? About my investments?" "No," I said defensively. though there had been some roundabout questions from Amanda about my mother's financial situation. "She will," Mom said simply. "And when she realizes our family isn't as wealthy as she probably hoped, things might change." I left feeling angry with Mom for suggesting such a thing. But her words stuck with me, especially as I started noticing the disappointment on Amanda's face whenever money came up. As our marriage progressed into its second year, things started changing between Amanda and me. Our arguments about money became more frequent and intense. She would make comments about my salary not being enough for the lifestyle she wanted. "Jack from my department just bought his wife a diamond bracelet for their anniversary," she'd say. "I guess some men really know how to take care of their wives." What hurt the most was how Amanda began distancing herself from my family, especially my mom. At first, she would make excuses about work deadlines to skip Sunday dinners. Then it became more blatant. "I just don't want to spend my weekend with your mother again," she would say. "She's always judging me." I tried to mediate to keep the peace between the two most important women in my life, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. "She's just protective," I would explain to Amanda. "She'll warm up to you eventually." "It's been 2 years," Amanda would snap back. "She's never going to accept me because she doesn't want to share her precious son with anyone." Then came the news that changed everything. Mom called me at work one Tuesday morning, her voice unusually shaky. "The doctor found something," she said. "I need you to come with me for some follow-up tests." The diagnosis was devastating. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. The prognosis gave her maybe 6 months a year if we were lucky. I was shattered. My mother, my best friend, the only constant in my life since Dad died, was now facing her own mortality. Amanda's reaction was not what I expected. There was sympathy, yes, but it felt performative. When I told her I wanted to take some time off work to help Mom with her appointments, her face tightened. "How long are we talking about? You know your promotion is coming up. This isn't a good time to step back." I was stunned. "My mother is dying, Amanda. The promotion can wait." The following months were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy appointments, and late nights researching experimental treatments. I was juggling work and caregiving, often coming home, exhausted only to find Amanda irritated by my absence. "We haven't been out in weeks," she complained one night. "I feel like I'm living alone. Mom needs me right now." I explained for what felt like the 100th time. "And what about what I need?" she shot back. "What about what we need as a couple? All this money we're spending on treatments that won't even work. It's draining our savings." That comment hit me like a slap. "This is my mother's life we're talking about." "I know, and I'm sorry," Amanda backpedaled, seeing my anger. "I just worry about us too." Around this time, I started noticing other changes in Amanda's behavior. She was guarded with her phone, often taking calls in another room. There were unexplained late nights at work and weekend conferences that she hadn't mentioned until the last minute. Then I found the texts. I wasn't snooping, not really. Her phone buzzed while she was in the shower, and when I glanced over, I saw a message preview from someone named Mike from work that read, "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was." My stomach dropped. I confronted her as soon as she came out of the bathroom. "Are you having an affair?" Amanda's face went through several expressions before settling on outrage. "You went through my phone. How dare you? I didn't go through anything." The message popped up. "Who's Mike?" "He's a colleague. We're working on a project together." "Not that I owe you an explanation when you're invading my privacy. Why would a colleague be texting you about last night?" In that way, Amanda switched tactics. "You know what? This is what happens when you neglect your marriage. When was the last time you and I had a date night? When was the last time you made me feel special? You're either at work or with your mother. There's nothing left for us." She managed to turn my accusation around so completely that I ended up apologizing to her. That's how manipulative she had become, or maybe that's how desperate I was to keep my marriage intact while my mother was dying. During one of Mom's clearer days as we sat in her garden watching the birds at her feeder, she took my hand. "James, I need to talk to you about Amanda." I sighed. "Mom, please not now." "Yes, now," she insisted, "because I might not have many more chances." She paused, gathering strength. "I don't trust her, son. I've watched how she looks at you, how she talks about money. It's not love I see." "Mom, you've never given her a chance?" I protested weakly. "I've given her every chance," Mom countered, "but I see what you don't want to see. Promise me something. Whatever happens with my estate, my money, be careful. Protect yourself. Nothing's going to happen to your estate anytime soon," I said, not wanting to think about her death. "Just promise me," she insisted, "and come see my lawyer with me next week. There are things we need to arrange." I agreed, mainly to ease her mind. What I didn't realize then was that my mother was putting into motion a plan that would ultimately save me from making the biggest mistake of my life. The day my mother died was the worst day of my life. Despite knowing it was coming, nothing prepares you for that final moment when someone you love takes their last breath. I was holding her hand in the hospice room, telling her about a bird I'd seen outside her window, a cardinal that reminded me of ones we used to watch together when I was a kid. She smiled weakly, squeezed my hand, and then she was gone, just like that. 30 years of being her son, of having her in my life every day, ended in a single moment. The funeral was small, just as Mom would have wanted. Close family friends, some of her colleagues from the school, where she'd taught mathematics for 25 years, and a few neighbors who had known her since I was a child. Amanda was noticeably absent. "Critical marketing presentation," she'd explained that morning, barely looking up from her makeup mirror. "I can't reschedule the entire department. Your mom would understand." I stood alone by my mother's casket, accepting condolences from people who shared stories of how my mom had touched their lives. My college roommate, Frank, flew in from Chicago to support me. My cousin Sarah stayed by my side throughout the service, but the person who should have been there holding my hand was busy advancing her career, or so she claimed. It was Frank who finally said what I'd been afraid to acknowledge. "Dude, where's your wife? This is messed up." "She had work," I mumbled, embarrassed. Frank gave me a long look. "No job is that important. Not on a day like today." 3 days after the funeral, I received a call from my mother's lawyer, Mr. Patterson. "We need to schedule the reading of the will," he said. "Your mother was very specific about the timing." I hadn't given much thought to Mom's will or her estate. It seemed insignificant compared to the enormity of her absence. But I agreed to come to his office the following Monday. When I mentioned the appointment to Amanda, her entire demeanor changed. Suddenly, she was attentive, interested in my well-being for the first time in months. "Do you want me to come with you?" she offered. For support, her sudden interest made me uncomfortable, but I agreed. Maybe this was her way of making up for missing the funeral. The atmosphere in Mr. Patterson's office was tense. I sat quietly, still numb with grief, while Amanda perched on the edge of her seat, unusually alert. Mr. Patterson, who had been my mother's lawyer and friend for decades, kept giving Amanda strange looks. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to express my deepest condolences, James. Your mother was an extraordinary woman." "Thank you," I murmured, while Amanda nodded impatiently. What came next was completely unexpected. My mother, the high school math teacher, who had always lived modestly, had amassed a fortune that left both Amanda and me in shock. Through careful investments, property holdings she'd never mentioned, and a sizable inheritance from her own parents that she'd grown substantially, my mother had left an estate worth just over $4 million. "Everything is left to you, James," Mr. Patterson said. "The house, the investment portfolio, the rental properties in Portland, and the cash accounts." I was speechless. Amanda was not. $4 million, she gasped, her hand, clutching mine suddenly much tighter than it had been at any point since my mother's diagnosis. "Approximately," Mr. Patterson nodded. "Your mother was quite financially savvy, James. Those math skills translated well to the market." On the drive home, Amanda was transformed. Gone was the distant, irritated wife of the past year. In her place was an excited, almost manic woman, making plans for our future. "We should look at houses in Bellevue like I always wanted," she bubbled. "And you can quit that job you've been complaining about. We could even travel for a year. Europe, Asia, wherever we want." I was still processing the loss of my mother, barely registering Amanda's rapid-fire plans for money I hadn't even received yet. "I need some time to think," I told her. "This is all happening too fast." "Of course, baby," she said, patting my hand. "Take all the time you need. I'm here for you." But she wasn't. Not really. Over the next 2 weeks, I would find her on the phone in hushed conversations that abruptly ended when I entered the room. She was spending more time on real estate websites than comforting her grieving husband. And then came the day I overheard a conversation that confirmed my worst fears. I had come home early from work, still struggling to focus on coding while processing my grief. Amanda was in our home office door slightly ajar, not expecting me for hours. "Yes, I'm sure about the amount," I heard her say in a low, excited voice. "Tax-free too. The old lady was smarter than I gave her credit for. No, he has no idea. Of course, I'm still moving forward with it. Why would I change the plan now? This just makes it even better. 4 million reasons to proceed, Mike." My blood ran cold. I knew then without a doubt that the affair I'd suspected was real. And worse, Amanda and this Mike had some kind of plan that involved my mother's money. The very next day, I came home to find a stranger in my living room. Amanda introduced him as her lawyer. There were papers on the coffee table. Divorce papers. She didn't even have the decency to pretend anymore. "I'm sorry, James," she said, not looking sorry at all. "We've grown apart. I think we both know this marriage isn't working." Since when I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "It's been coming for a long time," she said smoothly. "Your mother's illness just made it clearer to me. We want different things." "Like what?" I pressed. She faltered slightly. "I want to travel, experience life. You're content staying in one place. And this has nothing to do with the $4 million I just inherited." Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. "That's a horrible accusation. I'm not after your money." "No." I looked at the divorce papers. "Then why file exactly 2 weeks after the reading of the will? Why not during the months you were so unhappy while I was caring for my dying mother?" "This isn't productive," her lawyer interjected. "Mrs. Brown is entitled to her share of marital assets. Washington is a community property state." Something clicked in my brain then. A memory of my mother insisting I visit her lawyer with her, the document she'd made me sign that I'd been too distracted by her illness to fully read. I stood up. "I need to make a call," I said, and walked out of the room already, dialing Mr. Patterson's number. The conversation with Mr. Patterson changed everything. As I stood in my backyard phone, pressed to my ear, the fog of grief and betrayal began to lift, replaced by a startling clarity. "James, Mr. Patterson said, after I explained what was happening, "your mother anticipated this possibility. There's another document, a codicil to the will, that we didn't discuss at the reading because of who was present." "What are you saying?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "Your mother added a condition to your inheritance. The assets will be held in trust for 1 year following her death. If you divorce during that time, all assets immediately convert to a protected trust in your name only. Your wife would have no claim to any of it." I couldn't help the laugh that escaped me, a mix of disbelief and dawning admiration for my mother's foresight. She knew. Somehow she knew exactly what Amanda would do. "Your mother was a perceptive woman, Mr. Patterson said carefully. She wanted to protect you just in case. So if Amanda proceeds with this divorce, she gets nothing from the inheritance. Nothing at all." I took a deep breath, feeling for the first time since my mother's death a sense that maybe I could survive this after all. I need to meet with you, and I need a lawyer of my own. When I returned to the living room, I forced myself to look devastated, which wasn't difficult given everything I'd been through. But underneath, I was formulating a plan. "I'll need time to review these," I said, taking the divorce papers from Amanda's lawyer. Of course, the lawyer nodded. "But we are hoping for an amicable and quick resolution." "I bet you are," I thought, but outwardly, I just nodded sadly. Over the next week, I played the role of shocked, grieving husband while secretly meeting with my own divorce attorney, a shark of a lawyer named Diana, who came highly recommended by Mr. Patterson. I also hired a private investigator who quickly gathered evidence of Amanda's affair with her coworker Mike. Meanwhile, Amanda grew increasingly impatient. "Have you looked at the papers yet?" she would ask. "My lawyer says we could wrap this up in a month if you don't contest." "I'm still grieving my mother," I would respond, watching her barely concealed irritation. "This is a lot to process at once." 2 weeks after she served me the papers, we met with both our lawyers present. Amanda was practically gloating, certain she was about to walk away, with at least $2 million for her 2.5 years of marriage. Before we proceed, my lawyer Diana began, "We'd like to address some concerns about the timing of this divorce filing." Amanda's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "The timing is irrelevant. Washington law is clear on community property division." "Normally, yes," Diana smiled coldly. "But in this case, we have evidence suggesting Mrs. Brown has been planning this divorce specifically to coincide with Mr. Brown's inheritance, which is particularly problematic given Section 11(3) of Margaret Brown's will." Amanda frowned. "What's Section 11.3? Diana slid a document across the table, the Inheritance Protection Clause. "In the event of a divorce filing within 1 year of Mrs. Margaret Brown's death, all inherited assets immediately transfer to a protected trust, accessible only by James Brown." The color drained from Amanda's face. "That's not possible. That can't be legal." "I assure you it is," Diana continued. "We've also taken the liberty of documenting Mrs. Brown's ongoing extramarital affair with Michael Daniels, which began approximately 7 months ago, well before Margaret Brown's passing." She placed a folder on the table containing photos, text message transcripts, and hotel receipts. Amanda's lawyer opened it, reviewed the contents, and visibly deflated. "There's one more thing," Diana added. "Given the evidence of adultery and the obvious attempt to defraud Mr. Brown of his inheritance, we're prepared to countersue for all legal fees and emotional damages unless Mrs. Brown agrees to our terms." "Which are?" Amanda's lawyer asked weakly. "She walks away with nothing but her personal belongings. No alimony, no property division, no claim on any assets acquired during the marriage." Amanda exploded. "This is bullshit. You can't do this to me. Actually, I finally spoke, my voice steady. This is exactly what you were planning to do to me. You just didn't count on my mother being smarter than both of us." She turned on me then, mask completely dropped. 2 years. I wasted 2 years of my life with you and your pathetic, boring existence. I deserve something for that. What you deserve and what you're legally entitled to are very different things." Diana interjected coolly. In that moment, looking at Amanda's rage and calculation, I finally saw what my mother had seen from the beginning. This woman had never loved me. I had been a means to an end, a potential path to wealth that became worth pursuing only when she learned about my inheritance. "You can fight this," I said quietly, "but you'll lose, and it will cost you whatever you've managed to save on your own. Or you can sign my lawyer's agreement and walk away clean." 2 days later, Amanda signed the papers. 1 week after that, she moved out. I watched from the window as she loaded her clothes and personal items into her car, never once looking back at the house or the man she'd nearly destroyed. The first few months after Amanda left were a blur of pain and confusion. I had lost my mother and my marriage within weeks of each other. There were days I could barely get out of bed, let alone function. But slowly, with help, I began to rebuild. My first step was finding a therapist. Dr. Melissa helped me understand that none of this was my fault, that manipulative people like Amanda are expert at targeting kind, trusting individuals. Your openness and generosity aren't weaknesses, she told me. They're strengths that the wrong person exploited. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. Frank, my college roommate, started inviting me to weekly basketball games. My cousin Sarah would drop by with home-cooked meals. Colleagues from work took me out for beers and never pushed me to talk about what happened unless I wanted to. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I took a leave of absence from work and went on a solo road trip down the Pacific coast. Something about the endless horizon and constantly changing scenery helped put things in perspective. I'd stop at small coastal towns, eat at local diners, and take long walks on empty beaches. For the first time since everything fell apart, I could breathe again. When I returned, I made a decision about my mother's money. The $4 million that Amanda had been so eager to get her hands on. I established the Margaret Brown Education Foundation, a scholarship fund for underprivileged students interested in mathematics, my mother's passion. I kept enough to buy a comfortable new house, one without memories of Amanda, and to ensure my own financial security, but the majority went into the foundation. Every time I received a letter from a scholarship recipient, I could almost feel my mother's approval. This was what the money was truly for. Not luxury cars or mansions, but continuing her legacy of education and opportunity. I also started taking night classes in financial planning. My mother's financial acumen had saved me, and I wanted to understand how to manage my own finances better. The classes gave me a new interest, new people to meet, and a sense of purpose during the evening hours that had once been the loneliest. It was in one of these classes that I ran into Jessica, a woman I'd gone to high school with but hadn't seen in years. She was recently divorced too, taking the class for similar reasons. We started getting coffee after class, then dinner. There was no rush, no whirlwind romance like with Amanda, just a slow, steady building of trust and genuine connection. I liked your mom, Jessica told me one evening. She was my math teacher junior year. Toughest teacher I ever had, but also the best. She really saw her students. Hearing someone talk about my mother with genuine appreciation brought tears to my eyes. She saw people clearly, I agreed. Much more clearly than I did. Now, 2 years after my mother's death and my divorce, I can look back and see the gift my mother gave me. Not just the financial security of the inheritance, but the wisdom and protection built into it. She couldn't stop Amanda from breaking my heart, but she could stop her from taking advantage of me financially during the most vulnerable time of my life. I still miss my mom every day. I still have moments of anger about Amanda's betrayal, but mostly, I feel gratitude. Gratitude for a mother whose love extended beyond her own life to protect her son. Gratitude for the friends who helped me rebuild. Gratitude even for the painful lessons that made me wiser and more discerning. The night before she died, my mother took my hand and told me something I didn't fully understand until much later. "James," she said, "sometimes the people we lose teach us more than the ones who stay." At the time, I thought she was talking about herself preparing me for her death. Now, I realize she was also talking about Amanda knowing what was likely coming. She was telling me that both losses would ultimately be gifts in their own way. The pain would teach me, strengthen me, and eventually lead me to a better place than I had been before. She was right, as she so often was. The fortune my mother left me wasn't just in her bank accounts. It was in her foresight, her wisdom, and her endless protective love that continued to guide me even after she was gone. Have you ever had someone in your life who protected you in ways you didn't realize until later? Or have you experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And remember, sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what's in the bank account, but the wisdom passed down from those who truly love us. Thank you for listening, and may you always have people in your life who love you for who you are, not what you have.